Military history is filled with aircraft that looked like they were assembled from spare parts by engineers who'd never seen an airplane. Enemies laughed when these ungainly contraptions appeared on the battlefield. Bulbous fuselages, awkward proportions, designs that seemed to violate every principle of aerodynamics. Then the shooting started. Suddenly, the obsolete biplane was sinking battleships, the flying milk bottle was destroying elite fighter units, and the cartoon flying boat was hunting submarines with deadly precision. These 10 aircraft proved that in warfare, appearance means nothing, and lethality means everything. When the Douglas A-1 Sky Raider entered service in 1946, it was already obsolete, a massive single-seat piston aircraft arriving at the dawn of the jet age. Its bulky radial engine and straight wings looked ridiculously outdated compared to sleek jet fighters. North Korean and Vietnamese pilots initially treated encounters with Sky Raiders as easy victories, assuming the propeller-driven anachronism would be helpless against modern jet fighters like the MiG-15 and MiG-17 that could fly 200 miles per hour faster, creating confident attacks that turned into deadly surprises when the obsolete aircraft demonstrated capabilities jets couldn't match. The Sky Raider's ugliness concealed devastating effectiveness. It could carry 8,000 pounds of ordnance, more than a B-17 bomber, and loiter for hours, providing close air support that jets couldn't sustain. Its slow speed became a tactical advantage rather than liability. MiG pilots attempting to attack Sky Raiders found themselves overshooting at 500+ miles per hour closure rates, unable to slow down enough for accurate gunnery without stalling, while the Sky Raider calmly maneuvered at 200 miles per hour and returned fire with 4 20mm cannons that shredded jets when they got too close. The durability shocked enemies who scored hits expecting kills. Sky Raiders returned from missions with cylinders blown off, wings shredded and tails half destroyed, yet still flying. During Vietnam's Sandy rescue missions, Sky Raiders escorted helicopters through intense ground fire, absorbing punishment that would destroy jets while protecting slower rescue aircraft, proving that the ugly propeller fighter could survive in jet-age combat through sheer ruggedness that modern aircraft sacrificed for speed, and Vietnamese pilots learned to avoid engaging the dinosaur that refused to die. But if enemies thought the Sky Raider looked old, wait until they saw what was coming next. The fairy swordfish looked like it belonged in a World War I museum, not a 1940 combat zone. Its fabric-covered wings, fixed landing gear, and open cockpit made it seem laughably obsolete. German and Italian pilots who first encountered Swordfish couldn't believe Britain was still operating biplanes, assuming the antiquated aircraft would be easy victories for modern fighters like the Bf-109 and Machi C-202 that flew 200+ miles per hour faster, creating dismissive attitudes that turned deadly when the obsolete biplane demonstrated capabilities that speed couldn't counter. The Swordfish's maximum speed of 138 miles per hour became its greatest defensive advantage. German fighters attempting to attack discovered they couldn't slow down enough to maintain stable firing positions without stalling. Luftwaffe pilots reported frustrating engagements where they dive on swordfish formations, overshoot at 300+ miles per hour, climb to reset, and discover the biplanes had maneuvered away or completed their torpedo runs, while modern fighters struggled with the physics of engaging targets moving at WWI speeds that modern aircraft couldn't match without losing control. Then came Taranto. On November 11, 1940, 21 swordfish attacked the Italian fleet in harbour, sinking 3 battleships in one night. The raid shocked Italian command, who'd assumed their modern fleet was safe from antiquated biplanes, but the slow-flying attackers delivered torpedoes with devastating accuracy, while Italian anti-aircraft fire couldn't track targets moving far slower than their systems were calibrated for.
proving that obsolescence sometimes provides advantages that modernity eliminates. In 1941, a swordfish disabled the Bismarck's rudder, allowing the Royal Navy to sink Germany's most powerful battleship. The ugly biplane had achieved what modern aircraft couldn't, and the swordfish's primitive appearance was nothing compared to the next fighter's ridiculous nickname.
German pilots called it der Jug, the jug, or der Milchkrug, the milk bottle, mocking its enormous bloated fuselage that made it look more like a flying barrel than a fighter. Weighing over 7 tons fully loaded, the P-47 Thunderbolt violated every principle of fighter design that emphasized lightweight agility. Luftwaffe pilots initially approached encounters with confidence, assuming the massive American fighter would be slow and unmaneuverable, easy prey for the lighter Bf-109 and Fw-190 that German pilots had used to dominate European skies since 1939, creating aggressive attacks that turned suicidal when the milk bottle demonstrated capabilities that shattered every assumption about what heavy meant. The P-47's bulk concealed revolutionary capabilities. Its turbocharged radial engine produced 2,000-plus horsepower, giving it phenomenal speed in dives, over 500 miles per hour, faster than anything Germany flew. Luftwaffe pilots attempting to escape P-47 attacks discovered that diving away was impossible because the massive American fighter accelerated in dives faster than lighter German aircraft could follow, and climbing away was equally futile because the turbocharger maintained power at 30,000-plus feet, where German engines gasped for air, creating tactical situations where German fighters couldn't engage or disengage on their own terms. The ruggedness became legendary. P-47s absorbed 20mm cannon hits that would destroy 3 Bf-109s and kept flying. 8.50 caliber machine guns delivered firepower that shredded German fighters with brief bursts. By 1944, Luftwaffe pilots had learned to fear encounters with the ugly jug that could outrun them, outdive them, outclimb them at altitude, and absorb battle damage that would be fatal to German aircraft, proving that 7 tons of American engineering defeated lightweight elegance through overwhelming power and survivability. Yet even as P-47s dominated European skies, another ugly aircraft was hunting submarines nobody could see. And here's where this gets absolutely wild. What this next aircraft did to enemy submarines will blow your mind. A quick question. Enjoying so far? Then hit the subscribe button to never miss interesting aviation facts and history. The PBY Catalina looked like a bloated whale with wings grafted on as an afterthought. Its bulbous hull, parasol wing, and awkward stabilizer floats inspired more jokes than fear. Japanese and German submarine commanders initially viewed Catalina encounters as minor nuisances, assuming the slow, ungainly flying boat posed minimal threat to fast-moving submarines that could crash dive in seconds, creating complacent attitudes that turned deadly when crews discovered the ugly aircraft carried depth charges, operated for 18-plus hours without refueling, and could locate submarines from distances that gave no time for evasive action. The Catalina's 100 miles per hour cruise speed seemed pathetic compared to fighters. But for maritime patrol, endurance mattered more than speed. PBY crews could patrol vast ocean areas, spot submarines on the surface, and attack before targets could dive. The bulbous hull that looked ridiculous allowed it to land on 8-foot swells, retrieving downed pilots from open ocean in conditions that would sink rescue boats, and the parasol wing configuration provided exceptional visibility for spotting submarines, convoys, and enemy fleets that tried to hide in the vast Pacific where faster aircraft couldn't loiter long enough to find anything. The Catalina's greatest achievement came before Midway. A PBY located the Japanese fleet approaching the island, providing intelligence that enabled the American ambush that turned the Pacific War's tide. The discovery shocked Japanese command, who'd assumed their fleet's approach would remain undetected across thousands of miles of open ocean, but the ugly flying boat's 24-hour endurance and crew persistence found them anyway, proving that appearance means nothing when aircraft can stay airborne long enough to accomplish missions that speed alone can't achieve. That ugly flying boat helped win the Pacific, but the ugliest ground attack aircraft was terrorizing German tanks. German soldiers called the IL-2 Sturmovik der Schwarze Tod, the Black Death, but their initial encounters treated it as just another Soviet aircraft to be shot down. The boxy, ungainly design with stubby wings looked slow and vulnerable. Wehrmacht troops and Luftwaffe pilots initially engaged Sturmoviks confidently, assuming the ugly ground attack aircraft would be easy victories for German fighters and anti-aircraft fire, creating aggressive attacks that turned frustrating when 20mm cannon shells and machine gun fire hit the aircraft repeatedly without causing the catastrophic damage that destroyed every other Soviet type. The IL-2's appearance concealed revolutionary armor protection. The entire forward fuselage was an armored bathtub, 1,200 pounds of steel plating protecting pilot, engine, and fuel tanks. German pilots reported emptying entire ammunition loads into Sturmoviks without achieving kills, watching 20mm shells tear holes in wings and fuselage that seemed to have no effect, while the ugly aircraft continued its attack run, dropped bombs and rockets on German tanks, and flew away trailing smoke but still airborne, creating psychological impact where German troops realized they faced an opponent that conventional weapons couldn't reliably destroy. Over 36,000 Sturmoviks were produced, history's most manufactured combat aircraft. At Kursk, waves of the ugly armored aircraft shattered German panzer formations, their 23mm cannons and RS-82 rockets destroying tanks that ground forces couldn't stop. The appearance that Germans initially mocked became the silhouette they most feared, proving that armor and firepower defeat elegance when aircraft are designed to survive ground fire rather than win beauty contests, and German anti-aircraft units developed specialized tactics specifically for Sturmovik encounters that acknowledged the flying tank couldn't be killed through conventional methods. While the Sturmovik terrorized tanks, another ugly aircraft was terrorizing the Luftwaffe itself. The short Sunderland flying boat was a lumbering four-engine giant that looked incapable of defending itself. Its deep hull and massive wingspan made it seem like an easy target. German fighter pilots attacking Sunderlands expected quick victories against the slow maritime patrol aircraft that cruised at barely 130 miles per hour and seemed defenseless against fighters traveling 250+ miles per hour faster, creating confident attacks that turned into deadly surprises when the helpless flying boat revealed defensive firepower that no intelligence briefing had adequately warned about. The Sunderland bristled with defensive guns, nose turret, tail turret, beam guns, dorsal positions, creating overlapping fields of fire. Germans nicknamed it Fliegendes Stachelschwein, flying porcupine, after multiple fighters were shot down attacking what appeared to be easy prey. Each aircraft carried over 2,000 rounds of .303 ammunition and could generate defensive fire from multiple positions simultaneously, creating situations where attacking fighters faced concentrated return fire from several guns at once, and the coordinated defensive fire proved more effective than the sum of individual weapons suggested. In one legendary battle, a single Sunderland fought off 8 Ju-88 fighters, shooting down 3 before escaping. The encounter shocked Luftwaffe command, who'd assumed maritime patrol aircraft were vulnerable targets, but the Sunderland's defensive coordination and ammunition capacity allowed it to sustain prolonged engagements that German fighters couldn't match, and after several similar incidents, Luftwaffe pilots received directives to avoid engaging Sunderlands unless numerical superiority was overwhelming, essentially admitting that the ugly flying boat was too dangerous to attack. The Sunderland hunted submarines while defending itself, but the next ugly aircraft hunts tanks in modern combat. The A-10 Warthog looks like someone built an aircraft around a gun and forgot about aesthetics entirely. Straight wings in a swept-wing era, exposed engines, ungainly landing gear bulges. Everything about it violates modern fighter design principles. Iraqi forces during Desert Storm initially viewed A-10s as less threatening than sleek F-16s and F-15s, assuming the ugly, slow aircraft would be vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire and easy targets for surface-to-air missiles, creating complacent defensive postures that turned deadly when the Warthog's GAU-8 cannon started destroying tanks with armor-piercing rounds that conventional fighters couldn't deliver. The A-10's ugliness conceals extreme survivability. Its titanium bathtub protects pilots from 23mm cannon shells. Redundant flight controls mean losing hydraulics doesn't prevent flight, and the separated engines reduce vulnerability to ground fire. Iraqi gunners reported scoring direct hits with anti-aircraft fire that would destroy any other aircraft, watching the ugly Warthog absorb damage and continue attacking, destroying tanks and vehicles with the massive 30mm cannon that fires depleted uranium rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute, creating psychological terror where ground forces realized they faced an opponent that couldn't be reliably killed even when air defenses achieved direct hits. One A-10 returned from combat with 5 feet of wing missing and landed safely. Another flew home with one engine destroyed, hydraulics failed, and massive structural damage. The aircraft that enemies initially dismissed as obsolete and ugly proved nearly indestructible in combat, destroying 900+ Iraqi tanks during Desert Storm while demonstrating survivability that modern fighters can't match, and proving that sometimes the ugliest aircraft is exactly what ground troops need when everything else is too delicate for sustained ground fire exposure. Speaking of aircraft that enemies underestimated, the next one looks like it shouldn't fly at all. By the way, if you're realizing that ugly aircraft keep winning battles, you absolutely need to subscribe because the next few aircraft get even more bizarre and deadly. British pilots nicknamed it the Flying Brick. And the name stuck because the Blackburn Buccaneer looked incapable of flight. Its squat fuselage, chunky intakes and low-slung wings gave it a profile that seemed aerodynamically impossible. Soviet intelligence analysts initially dismissed it as another failed British design that would be easy prey for interceptors and surface-to-air missiles, assuming the ugly strike aircraft couldn't penetrate modern air defenses designed to counter sleek supersonic threats, creating defensive doctrines that proved inadequate when the brick demonstrated capabilities that appearance didn't suggest. The Buccaneer was engineered specifically for low-level penetration of Soviet defenses. Its boundary layer control system blew engine air over wings, generating impossible lift at slow speeds for carrier operations. But the real capability was speed at sea level. The ugly brick could fly 600+ miles per hour at 200 feet, faster than most interceptors could achieve at that altitude. And the low-level flight profile kept it below radar coverage, while the rugged construction allowed it to handle the turbulence that broke apart lighter aircraft attempting similar missions. During the 1991 Gulf War, ancient Buccaneers proved more effective than modern aircraft at precision targeting. RAF Buccaneers used laser designators to guide bombs for tornadoes, demonstrating accuracy that newer jets couldn't match. The combat performance shocked observers who'd assumed the ugly Cold War relic was obsolete, but pilots discovered the Buccaneer could fly missions that killed sleeker aircraft, proving that sometimes ungainly designs optimized for specific missions outperform general-purpose aircraft that look better but perform worse in specialized roles that require extreme capabilities. While the brick penetrated defenses, another ugly aircraft hunted submarines nobody could detect. The fairy gannet looked more like a mechanical insect than a military aircraft. Its most peculiar feature was the double Mamba engine, two turboprops driving counter-rotating propellers, with a bulbous radar dome and Z-fold wings, creating an appearance so bizarre that even friendly forces did double takes. Soviet submarine commanders initially weren't particularly concerned about gannet encounters, assuming the strange-looking British aircraft was just another patrol plane that could be evaded through standard evasion tactics, creating complacent responses that proved inadequate when the insect demonstrated detection and endurance capabilities that made evasion nearly impossible. The gannet's appearance concealed sophisticated anti-submarine capabilities. The pilot could shut down one engine mid-flight, saving fuel while the other maintained flight, allowing 10-plus-hour patrols hunting submarines. The advanced radar could detect periscopes and snorkels at ranges that gave submarines no time to dive deep enough to evade attacks, and the long endurance meant gannets could patrol areas for entire shifts, maintaining constant surveillance that made Soviet submarine operations in certain zones essentially impossible without accepting high detection risks. The ugly appearance became a Cold War deterrent. Soviet submarines operating near British carriers knew gannet patrols meant they'd likely be detected and tracked. During the Falklands War, Britain's lack of gannet early warning aircraft, retired because they looked too ugly for modern service, allowed Argentine aircraft to conduct surprise low-level attacks that sank British ships, creating bitter recognition that the mechanical insect's capabilities mattered more than its appearance, and several British officers argued the war's casualties could have been prevented if the ugly but effective gannet had remained in service. But even the insect's bizarre appearance couldn't match the experimental contraption that revolutionized night fighting. The Northrop P-61 Black Widow looked like an engineering experiment that accidentally ended up in combat. Its bulbous nose, long tail booms, and oversized frame at 45 feet long made it appear awkward and vulnerable. Japanese and German pilots who encountered the strange-looking aircraft at night initially weren't particularly alarmed, assuming the ungainly twin-boom design would be slow and easy to evade once detected, creating confident evasion attempts that turned fatal when the contraption demonstrated capabilities that night combat had never seen before. The Black Widow was the world's first purpose-built radar-equipped night fighter. The bulbous nose housed SCR-720 radar that could detect bombers at 5 miles in total darkness. While enemy aircraft flew blind at night, hoping to avoid detection, the ugly contraption could see them from distances that gave no warning before attack, and the 420mm cannons delivered devastating surprise fire that destroyed targets before crews understood what was happening, creating psychological terror among night bomber crews who realized nowhere was safe from an enemy that could see in complete darkness. The P-61 achieved the war's final aerial kill, shooting down a Japanese bomber minutes after Japan announced surrender in August 1945. The ironic final victory demonstrated how the ugly contraption had revolutionized night combat, proving that radar-equipped fighters could hunt in conditions where appearance meant nothing and detection meant everything, and establishing tactical doctrines for all-weather fighters that would dominate Cold War aviation despite the Black Widow's ungainly appearance that made it look like it belonged in a science fiction movie rather than combat operations. These 10 ugly aircraft taught enemies a brutal lesson: never judge lethality by appearance. While sleek fighters won headlines, ungainly workhorses won battles through capabilities that aesthetics couldn't predict. From obsolete biplanes sinking battleships to flying bricks penetrating defenses, they proved wars are won by effectiveness, not elegance. Ugly doesn't mean ineffective. It means enemies underestimate you until it's too late. Watch the next video of vintage planes for more untold stories.